Thank you for joining us. I'm Elliot Rodriguez. 25 years ago, Miami found itself at the center of an international custody battle that thrust a 5-year-old boy onto the world stage. That boy was Elian Gonzalez, and his odyssey started in the Cuban province of Matanzas in November of 1999. That's when Elian, his mother, and about a dozen others boarded a makeshift boat for the dangerous journey to the United States. 4 days later, on Thanksgiving Day, Elian was found floating on an inner tube about 3 miles off the coast of Dania Beach. The Elian saga ended on April 22, 2000, when heavily armed federal agents raided his Miami family's home, seizing Elian and returning him to his father, who flew his son back to Cuba. Hank Tester, who covered the story 25 years ago, as I did, takes us back to a tumultuous time in Miami history.
He was the cutest little kid, and he had a story, a big story that lingered for months, dividing the Miami community with implications that spread from the streets of Little Havana to the nation's capital. But 25 years later, does anyone remember Elian Gonzalez? Andy Gomez was at the time a University of Miami professor.
No. Every once in a while in a conversation, when some of us get together, we talk about Elian, and more so in the failures of how the whole Elian episode was handled.
Coral Gables City Commissioner Kirk Menendez, then a young lawyer working for the Cuban American National Foundation.
This is the United States of America. This is not Cuba. The president represents us, not Castro.
I think in the hearts of the Cuban American community, Elian is still present, but it's something that, it's a sadness, it's a frustration that people carry inside of them.
November 25th, 1999, Thanksgiving, Elian Gonzalez found on an inner tube floating in the Atlantic. His mother died, lost at sea during an escape from Fidel Castro's Cuba.
Elian became a symbol for the Cuban American community's fight against Fidel Castro.
Elian had relatives in Miami, and they took him in. His father in Cuba wanted him returned to his custody, and so did Fidel Castro. Many in the exile community did not want to see the little boy sent to his father, saying he would be Fidel Castro's trophy child and a propaganda victory for the Castro regime.
We became a chess piece in a geopolitical chess match.
What ensued was a legal, political, and emotional battle that split families, the community, and ranged from state court, federal court, the Justice Department, and the White House. Attorney General Janet Reno, a Miami native, advocated returning Elian to his Cuban father, opposed by leaders of the exile community and family members who wanted him to stay with the Miami family. From the very beginning, Andy Gomez said the exiles would lose the struggle.
Elian became a symbol for the Cuban American community's fight against Fidel Castro.
Negotiations with the family failed. Court actions failed. The Justice Department, headed by Janet Reno, made their move.
Back behind the barricade!
Early morning, April 22nd, 2000, a Good Friday. Federal agents raid the Miami family home. Elian is spirited away.
Here they come out with Elian, a woman carrying Elian, and into the truck. Elian appears to be crying.
The streets of Miami erupt, intense demonstrations, tear gas, arrest, frustration. One part of a divided community on full display, disappointment in the U.S. government, and little or no support from the non-Cuban community.
You got to see the people's true colors of what they really thought. I know folks that from that point on, I think they found an excuse to hate, openly criticize the Cuban American community.
The Elian saga was a blow to the anti-Castro exile organizations. The lasting legacy?
And I think, unfortunately, that was the last hurrah for a certain generation.
And with Elian in the embrace of Fidel Castro, returned by the U.S. government, the exiles.
I think they realized inside that hope was gone. That represented, this is our last great stand.
This street, Little Havana, quiet after 25 years. Elian, yes, he's that trophy child in Cuba, got a college degree as an engineer, back with his father and family. I'm Hank Tester, CBS News, Miami.
Elian's return to Cuba was a victory for the Cuban government and for Fidel Castro. The Cuban leader doted on little Elian and often visited Elian as he was growing up. Elian is now 31 years old. He studied industrial engineering, got married, and has a 4-year-old daughter. 2 years ago, Elian was elected to Cuba's Popular Assembly, and that's when he sat down with a journalist for the independent media outlet Belly of the Beast. Here are portions of that interview.
Memorias felices tengo muchas, pero entre las memorias más felices que tengo es el momento de encontrarme nuevamente con mi padre. Aunque en ese momento yo no sabía ni tan siquiera lo que estaba pasando en Cuba, ni lo que estaba pasando en el mundo, ni me imaginaba lo que había trascendido aquello. Estar con mi papá fue recuperar mi centro y recuperar todo lo que anhelaba. Otro momento de indiscutible alegría fue volver a ver a toda mi familia. Yo recuerdo que cuando bajo del avión, que mi papá me tenía abrazado, mi papá me volteó hacia él y le digo, papá, yo no quiero estar aquí, yo quiero volver para Cuba. Porque para mí La Habana no era Cuba, Cuba era mi barrio, Cuba era Cárdenas, lo que yo estaba acostumbrado a ver. Yo quería volver a eso, yo quería volver a mi casa. Y cuando vi a mi familia allá abajo de las escalerillas, fue que entonces sentí la tranquilidad de que estaba en Cuba, de que estaba en mi centro, y volví a tener ese segundo momento de una felicidad inmensa, poder abrazar a mis abuelos, poder abrazar a mis primos, reencontrarme con la familia. Recuerdo que enseguida me lancé a mi abuelo. Yo tenía la costumbre desde chiquitico de morderle a la oreja y él me la mordía a mí. Es una costumbre de toda una vida. Nos levantábamos por la mañana y lo hacíamos y ante acostándonos también. Y yo llego, lo primero que hago es abrazarlo y morderle la oreja, me acerco a la oreja y lo muerdo. Y las cámaras pudieron captar la felicidad de mi abuelo. Se desbordó y entonces se acercan a él, la prensa. ¿Y qué fue aquello que te dijo el niño que te causó tanta alegría, que se vio en tu rostro esa alegría? Y mi abuelo en ese momento más risa le dio, le dice, no me dijo nada, me ha pegado una clase mordida en la oreja que usted no se imagina. Y entonces es indiscutible que volver con mi papá y volver a Cuba, cuando ya yo pude ver a mi familia, pude ver que de verdad estaba con los míos, fue el momento más feliz de mi vida.
¿Recuerdas esa noche en la que te reuniste con tu papá?
Recuerdo lo que fue sentirse a gusto otra vez, lo que fue sentirse protegido y sentirse en su espacio, en paz. Y puedo mirar atrás sin temor, sin ningún tipo de rencor ni odio, porque también me enseñó eso mi papá, me lo enseñó mi familia.
¿En algún momento te has arrepentido de estar aquí?
No, nunca. Nunca. Y hoy, más que nunca, me siento feliz de estar en Cuba.
¿Por qué?
Porque tengo mi hija en Cuba. Y sé lo que sintió mi papá por mí y sé lo que él quiso para mí. Vivimos muchas necesidades, las vivo yo también. Yo no vivo en una cápsula aparte del cubano y sé que son muchos los trabajos que pasamos. Sé que hay muchos problemas que son nuestros y tenemos que trabajar duro por enfrentarlos, corregirlos. Pero también reconozco, y sería ciego si no se reconociese, todo lo que hay y todo lo que se manipula alrededor de Cuba, desde el exterior hacia nosotros, por parte del gobierno de Estados Unidos, para hacernos esa vida difícil, para hacernos esa vida compleja.
¿Crees que es posible llegar a un entendimiento?
Yo creo que sí. Hay muchas más cosas que nos unen que las que nos dividen. Empezando desde la sangre, empezando desde las raíces, la cultura, las tradiciones, hasta terminando por temas tan subjetivos como un partido de béisbol que nos puede unir en vez de separarnos. Porque un cubano no quiere lo peor para otro cubano, no debería quererlo. Puede querer un cambio, puede querer muchas cosas, pero no puede querer la asfixia para su pueblo. Nuestro deseo es que Cuba mejore y un día poder traer de regreso a la gran mayoría de los cubanos que se han ido, que quieran volver a Cuba. Ese sería un sueño hecho realidad. Que esos amigos que yo tengo, esos familiares, que sea la nostalgia que sienten de estar separados, que sea la nostalgia que sienten por su barrio, por su casa, donde crecieron, que puedan regresar.
Cuando piensas en tu mamá, ¿en qué piensas?
Mi mamá fue una excelente madre, que incluso perdió su vida tratando de salvarme a mí y buscando un mejor lugar para vivir, porque también fue víctima de esa política de recrudecimiento de sanciones a Cuba que hacen que el cubano quiera emigrar. Es la persona en la que pienso cuando voy a realizar una acción. Y cuando hablo de que deseo que los cubanos no emigren más y que deseo que el exilio y Cuba tengan una mejor relación, también lo hago por ella, para que no existan más madres que pierdan a su vida y que para que no existan más familias que se dividan y se separen a través del estrecho de la Florida.
When we come back, I'll talk to Liz Oliva Fernandez about Elian's desire to be a bridge between Cubans on the island and those in the United States.
He kind of understands what's going on in Miami and he's empathic with the people.
Her thoughts on the divide and Cuba's long history of family separation when we return.
Y yo creo que también sería importante, y me veo que pudiera hacerlo, poder ayudar desde el Parlamento en el restablecimiento y la mejoría de las relaciones entre Cuba y Estados Unidos. Yo creo que puedo aportar mucho a eso, porque yo conozco el pueblo norteamericano y sé lo que fue capaz de hacer por mí y por mi padre. Sé de lo mucho que se movilizó e hizo por nosotros. Sé que hay un buen corazón detrás de ese pueblo. Y entonces sé que vale la pena seguir luchando y apelando a que ese pueblo sea el que nos ayude a que se levanten todas las sanciones que hoy se tejen sobre nuestro país.
Elian Gonzalez didn't criticize or speak poorly of his Miami relatives or of the Cuban-American community in general during the interview with independent Cuban journalist Liz Oliva Fernandez for Belly of the Beast. In fact, he said he'd like to visit the United States, adding that Cubans here have good hearts. Some might be surprised by that comment. Journalist Liz Oliva Fernandez talked to me from Havana about her conversation with Elian. Let me ask you, because you interviewed Elian, I believe it was a couple of years ago when he ran for the National Assembly there in Cuba, right? And he won the election, and that's how you were able to get that interview. So fill us in on what his life is like now in Cuba. I know he is a father. He's now started a new career in politics. What is his life like?
The impression that I have from this interview was like he was trying to build something inside of Cuba. And that was something that gave me at that time like a lot of hope, because when you talk to young people in Cuba, the most of them want to leave Cuba because they think that they don't have a future here, that they need to leave in order to build something else. And with Elian was different. The impression that I had is that he actually was pushing forward, who was trying to evolve in the political movement inside of Cuba and try to build like a better Cuba, who actually were like we became a better place for those who actually leave Cuba can come back.
Well, there's something that he said that stuck with me. He said two things. First of all, he said that he felt that the Cubans in Miami, maybe, I guess he was talking about his family, maybe, he said they had good hearts. And he also said that he wants to be a bridge between the Cubans on the island and the Cuban Americans here. Did you get the sense that that's the mission that he wants to take on?
I really believe that he wants to build bridges between Cuba and the United States. And I actually believe that he wants to find a balance between the both sides. I actually believe that he knows or he kind of understands what's going on in Miami, and he's empathic with the people because they are also Cubans. Why not?
You asked Elian about his childhood and what he remembers about his childhood in Miami. What did he say that he remembers?
The thing that stuck with me about that interview is the feelings that he has for his mother, and it's really beautiful and compassionate, and I don't know. And also, like you can imagine that he named his daughter after his mom, so that tells a lot.
I could tell from the interview that he has fond memories of his mother, a lot of love for his mother, but why wouldn't he want his mother's wish to come true for him to live outside of Cuba?
In my opinion, sometimes our parents' dreams are not ours. And I actually believe that his mother thought at that moment that living in the United States, living in Cuba in the way that they did, uh, was the best things for him and his future. And actually, I asked him about that. Are you regret to coming back to Cuba? Are you regret to they take you bad here and you have to grow up here and not in the United States? And he said no. And actually he said more than that because he said like now I understand what my father was going through because I'm father too. I have a child and I can't imagine a future for my life, for my daughter that is not like living here, growing up here in the way that I did. When you are like with Cuban Americans, when you listen to them like talking about Cuba and so like I don't know, like angry way for saying it polite. I think, did you forget that there are people like you living here? Did you forget that that's your country too?
I think that it's the emotional impact that so many people had when the first generation was forced to leave and leave everything they had, and their businesses were taken from them, and their homes were taken from them. They were taken, and then they came here. And I think that that resentment has been handed down from generation to generation.
I get it.
Right.
I get it. And I understand that maybe your ideal Cuba or the Cuba that you want to coming back is not the same Cuba that I want to build from here. But for sure, I think like Cubans, we need to think more about how bring the entire community together, even if there is difference.
Let me ask you about something Elian said when you asked him what happy memories he had. And he said that the happiest memory he had was not when he was reunited with his dad or when he went back to Havana. It was when he went to his little town in Cardenas.
For him, Cuba was Cardenas. He was like 5 years old. Maybe he have never been in Havana before.
Has he led a normal life in Cuba? I mean, after all, he was, Fidel Castro's favorite little 5-year-old boy. Has he led a normal life in Cuba?
He said that yes. He said
Do
that
you
he
believe
had
it?
a normal life. Yeah, they're living in the same house, the entire house, and you can notice they don't have like a huge big house or like a fancy life. It's just the house that belongs to her father and also maybe to his grandfathers.
Did he say why he decided to go into politics?
I think like the most of the time he said that because he actually want to bring, um, he wants to try to build a better Cuba, and also because he wants to, in some point, like as you said, like build this bridge between the Cuban community in the United States and the Cubans who actually stay in Cuba.
Up next, former Miami Mayor Manny Diaz remembers the night federal agents stormed Elian's house with guns pointed straight at him.
I'm looking at little red dots on my chest. It was a very scary, scary moment.
He looks back at the saga 25 years later. Next.
¿Por qué quedarte en Cuba?
Yo quiero quedarme en Cuba porque sería cobarde irme de Cuba. Y no quiero decir con esto que el que se haya ido es un cobarde. Pero en primer lugar, yo al pueblo de Cuba le debo una cosa, que es que el pueblo de Cuba luchó mucho porque yo regresara y porque estuviese con mi papá. Y sería hipócrita si me fuese de Cuba y si no luchase por el pueblo de Cuba. ¿Cómo puedo luchar porque vivamos mejor si me voy y le doy la espalda a Cuba? Hay que luchar aquí, hay que quedarse y hay que hacer todo lo posible porque traigamos bienestar y prosperidad a este país.
¿Sientes que esa responsabilidad es un peso sobre tus hombros?
Yo nunca pensé llegar al Parlamento. Hoy mis compromisos son otros y mayores, pero porque quiero hacer más. Pero no porque lo sentí así, porque nunca el pueblo cubano me pidió nada a cambio.
Elian Gonzalez's Miami family had to fight in state and federal court to try to keep the boy in the United States. One of the attorneys who represented them would later become mayor of Miami. Manny Diaz was inside the house when the raid took place. He had spent weeks negotiating with the Justice Department and facing off with then Attorney General Janet Reno, who was a Miamian herself and was well aware of the passion the case ignited in her hometown. I recently sat down with Manny Diaz to look back on the night his hopes to keep Elian here vanished. Manny, take me back to April 22nd, 2000. That was the night we all remember that the federal agents came in, raided the house of Elian's family, and took him away. You were inside the house. How clearly do you remember what happened that night?
Oh, I'll never forget that day and that night. You know, the fact that I'm standing in a very, very small home in Little Havana and that I'm looking at little red dots on my chest was a very scary, scary moment. And there was no reason for it. We had spoken to the family and told them, like, look, in the off chance that this were to happen and they were to show up with a warrant or some sort of subpoena to turn over the child, as officers of the court, we have to comply with the court order. So you guys are okay with that, right? And it's like, yeah, of course. We're not going to tell you to do something you're not, allowed to do.
So my understanding is that Janet Reno wanted the entire family, Gonzalez family, those from Cuba and those from the United States, to be together here in the U.S., which they had already arrived, and to try to work out a solution to this custody dispute. Why do you think she didn't allow that to happen?
I don't know. You know, one of the questions that all of us have and continue to have is why did it end up that way? There was absolutely no reason for it to end up that way.
Do you think if the family had gotten together, both the Cuba family from the island and the Cuban-American family, to try to work this out together, do you think there's a possibility they could have decided that they wanted the boy to stay in the United States because that's what his mother wanted?
Or some other variation of that theme. They were very close, and they had conversations, like, for example, Elian's father calling and asking one of the relatives here to try to get 3 visas to come here for him, his wife, and his new child. He had sold his old jalopy in Cuba to get money for the trip. But once Fidel put his arm around Juan Miguel in Havana, it's like the Godfather movie, right? Once the Godfather puts his arm around you, you're on the hit list. And so, you had that, you had the government here, it became very political. So there came a point where this sort of developed a life of its own, and the family got, I think, pitted against each other in a very adversarial way. It didn't have to be.
And that family is divided to this very day.
Sure,
over what happened. You've said that you thought Elian's father, Juan Miguel Gonzalez, wanted to stay in the United States. Why do you say that?
Because that's what the family told me. Those are the conversations they had with him. He actually ordered them to go and start the application for visas before all of this. Okay, not during the process. Obviously, at that point, it's too late. But before all of this happened, and the fact that he was aware that Elizabeth, Elian's mom, and others were leaving.
Do you think if that case had gone to an immigration court and the court had ruled in favor of the father, that the Miami family would have respected that ruling?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Manny, an independent journalist in Cuba interviewed Elian 2 years ago because he ran for a spot in the Popular Assembly, National Assembly, whatever they call it, and he won. So he's now a politician like you used to be. And he says unequivocally that he is very happy living in Cuba. That's what he wanted. He feels at home, and that he didn't want it. He's glad that this happened. When you look at that, do you think that your position there was wrong? Why don't you believe him?
He may feel that way today, okay, but I'm speaking of what was happening 25 years ago. Because 25 years ago, I sat with him in the living room. I sat with the family in the living room. I became part of the family. And I heard and was a part of, mostly here, listen, family conversations. And I knew what was going on. I was there when they were having phone conversations with Juan Miguel, you know. And he was talking to his dad. Dad, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here. Why don't you come here?
Is it possible that we as Cuban Americans are so used to having separated families that the fact that there was a chance that this little boy would live apart from his family was not foreign to us? And I'll give you my example because I'm Cuban American like you are, and I always thought I came from a small family. My mom, my dad, me and my sister. But my father had 7 brothers and sisters. Yes. It's just that he was the first one to leave Cuba. Yeah. So we were separated. I didn't know that part of the family. It's kind of not unusual to us, right?
It's just part of our life. The fact that families are separated and families are united. There are many instances of that. You know, for us, Elian was not that difficult to understand, in part because that is part of the family separation reunification.
I asked Manny Diaz about Elian's desire to be a bridge between Cubans on the island and Cuban Americans in exile. He didn't seem optimistic. After all, Elian is now part of the government that rules Cuba, and despite Elian's claims that he's led a normal life in Cuba, there is still the fact that he was Fidel Castro's favorite 5-year-old boy who was welcomed with his father as heroes of the nation when they returned to Cuba a full 7 months after a little boy was found on an inner tube 25 years ago. I'm Elliot Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us.